We've heard the news that Jurgen Klopp will leave Liverpool at the end of the season. So I've decided to make this video to look back on how he transformed Liverpool tactically. After a successful spell at Dortmund, he went to Liverpool, who was struggling under Brendan Rodgers. Klopp finished 8th in his first half season. In the 16-17 season, Klopp took them to 4th, with a clear 4-3-3. Their wingers would get narrow and their fullbacks would be very aggressive. And he also started to implement his Gegenpress style, which he was so successful with at Dortmund. But it was the following season where he really improved, getting to the Champions League final and only losing 2 curious mistakes and their best player getting injured early on. Now this is the season where we can start looking at the tactics. Just remember that halfway through the season Coutinho was sold, which means their front three consisted of Salah, Mane and Firmino. In build-up they had players that were good on the ball, and the long ball to Salah or Mane was an option. Salah and Mane were excellent at holding off the defender and receiving the ball. Or a pass to Firmino, he could drop into the space. Firmino had a lot of positional freedom and he could play between the lines to create overloads with the wingers. Now when you look at Liverpool's midfield of Wijnaldum, Milner and Henderson, and then look at City's midfield of De Bruyne, Silva and Fernandinho, you might think that there's a clear superiority for Manchester City. And that's because of their creativity. Wijnaldum and Henderson don't really have the same creativity as De Bruyne and Silva. So Klopp needed to find creativity somewhere else, and he looked to the fullbacks. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson are very creative, especially compared to others in their position. And they would constantly get the ball and cross it into the box, with Mane, Firmino and Salah coming narrow to pick up headers and tap-ins. But in the final third, Firmino is far more crucial than you might think. He could pull defenders out of position to allow Salah and Mane to have free space to run into. But his biggest quality was operating in those tight spaces in zone 14. He was amazing at receiving the ball, keeping it, and playing it back to one of the wingers for an easy chance. And he could score from the cutback. Now Salah and Mane were a mix between a forward and a winger, often called a wide forward or an inverted winger. And we all know how good they are at finishing and doing things traditionally associated with being the striker. But you can't underestimate their winger qualities as well. They had great dribbling. They could also operate in tight spaces, and the midfielders could join in for the overload. In the end, quick combination play helped them break teams down. But for Klopp, his out-of-possession play was just as important as in-possession play. He would press really hard to win the ball back and score. Liverpool's midfielders would man-mark the oppositions, while Firmino shadow marks the deepest opposition midfielder. And the wingers would stay in the half spaces between the fullback and the centre-back. This means that the opposition centre-backs could either play it long, the Liverpool centre-backs like Van Dijk to collect, or they could try a pass into the fullback, which probably would get intercepted, or they can play a pass into the centre, which Liverpool's aggressive midfielders could win back and pass to the wingers in the half spaces. I mentioned earlier that Liverpool's midfield doesn't look as impressive as other midfields, but one thing that they are very good at is out-of-possession play. They can run for miles and they can tackle and win the ball back when they need to. But to press high, your players need to be high up. And you also need to be compact, which meant a high line. This could be a problem for some teams, but not for Liverpool. Klopp had centre-backs which were quick enough to get back. And if you managed to bypass the defence, they had a goalkeeper that specialises in 1-versus-1 scenarios. Liverpool could also sit back, and that suits them as well, with fast wingers ready to counter. But if we're going to talk about Liverpool under Klopp, we have to talk about Gegenpressing. Gegenpressing has been Klopp's trademark over the years. He's used it to achieve success at Dortmund and Liverpool. Gegenpressing happens when the ball has just been won back by the opposition. The opposition player that's won it back has barely got it under control. And Klopp believes that this is when he's most vulnerable. So his team would absolutely swarm that player and try and win it back, which would normally be in a dangerous position where they can score from. And once again this suits Liverpool's energetic midfielders. And it also suits Roberto Firmino, who's very good out of possession. Imagine receiving the ball, putting your head up to pass and seeing 5 Liverpool players swarming around you. And remember Alexander-Arnold and Robertson's crosses? This meant they would lose the ball high up the pitch, usually from a cross. And if they lose it high up, they can win it back high up. This was a system where every single player in the Liverpool team had a specific job that matched perfectly They nearly became the second team to go through a whole season undefeated. And imagine how successful he would have been if he didn't have Pep Guardiola's Manchester City standing in the way. He lost the league title by 1 point on 2 different occasions. But after that it started to go wrong. Crucial players were leaving, and Liverpool was slipping down the table. And it looked like Klopp's amazing era at Liverpool had to come to an end. Things were changing, and he had to move on. He tried replacing his golden team like Gakpo for Firmino, Núñez for Mane, but it just didn't work. There were times where it looked like he could have received the sack, and it looked like there was no European football for Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Some people thought his sacking was inevitable, and if he didn't get sacked, he would have to leave at the end of the season. It would be sad for him to end his Liverpool career on a low, but that's just what had to happen. Except it wasn't, and it didn't. Klopp tried something new, inverting Alexander-Arnold into the midfield. But on paper it didn't really make any sense. It meant the 2 midfielders had to push up, which they weren't used to doing. It meant that the wingers had to stay wider, which also wasn't their game. Klopp's unique tactics were coming to an end, and it was turning more into Guardiola ball. So after years of fighting Pep Guardiola with his unique tactics, he decided to try beat him at his own game. And suddenly, it all fell into place. Alexander-Arnold was thriving in his deep-lying playmaker position. Everyone was clicking into gear. Salah was showing his dribbling qualities as a wide winger. Jurgen Klopp had rescued Liverpool's season and sent them into 5th place for a Europa League spot. They needed to be smart in the transfer window, and they were. McAllister, Szoboszlai, Endo and Gravenberch came in. They had lost 3 players that were key for Liverpool in the past, but that didn't matter because they were moving on to something new. Everyone was settling into their new positions very well, and suddenly Liverpool were top of the league. Salah and Trent are thriving in their new roles. Van Dijk and Alisson look back to their best, and their new signings are perfect for this system. Jurgen Klopp has turned Liverpool into title challengers once again. He's competing for the Carabao Cup, Europa League, Premier League and FA Cup. After winning every major trophy available to win, he will finish his 9-year stay at Liverpool as a club legend.
Because of my experience in all the things, in the other clubs, and my experience as a player and all the things, so I'm prepared. But of course, this is absolutely crazy what happened here, and that's what I wanted to say. When I left Dortmund, my last sentence maybe were, it's not so important what people think when you come in. It's much more important what people think when you leave.
I hope you enjoyed the analysis, and if you did, make sure to subscribe. And if you're a Liverpool fan, then enjoy your last season with Jurgen Klopp.